like videos?
Hey bro, do you like videos? Well, we've got heaps of them. Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings 2, Avatar, Lord of the Rings 3, Game of Thrones Season 1. Oh no, that's Lord of the Rings again. Sorry. Got
The
6
Paparuru Show.
The Paparuru Show. Whale Rider. Oh, it's Free Willy.
Oh, is it working now?
That's working.
Oh, is this recording now already?
It's recording.
Oh shit, we didn't do it. Alright, you can do the intro. I'm gonna...
Hello, coming up, this is Reuben and Hunter, joined by Emmy and Brad. We're here live from the Stucco Deck.
It's live when we record it, but it might not be live when you listen to it.
Yeah, it's time.
It might be edited.
Be live.
Yeah.
Probably the only
It's not going to be live much longer.
Yeah.
It's one of the things about being live. It doesn't last. Life doesn't last, Reuben.
No.
So with that, into our first segment. Wait, are we going to do our little introduction things?
What?
Oh, I suppose that's it.
We need the mystery object.
Yeah, where's the mystery object? All right, well, Reuben's going to introduce the mystery object. Yeah, you know who we all are, I guess. Do they know who you are?
No, I don't know.
These guys came from all the way from Hawaii, and before that they were in Toronto, and before that they were in Sydney. So it was a really long trip. They took the long way around to get here.
That's true.
Yeah.
Before that, we were actually in Perth.
Oh.
And before that, we were in Melbourne.
Oh, mate.
And before that, we were in Sydney.
Yeah, we left Sydney 3 years ago.
All the way around, man. How long did that trip take you guys?
3 years, man. It was good though. It's a really good. It's a good experience. That's
journey.
Yeah, all of those. Yeah, I think it was nice. You really you get to know the city that you've lived in your whole life the best once you leave it properly.
Yeah. I feel like that about my sister. That doesn't really work for anything. Oh, this is our mystery object. I'm gonna cut out my sister from the podcast.
Jesus.
No. Our mystery object has like a bent little end, but it's curved up. It's for you can hear it on the table there.
Yeah.
It's for doing things.
It's for doing things. Yeah.
I should tell you guys, we usually speed up the podcast a little bit when we release it, so people think we're smarter because we talk fast.
Don't use your Porky Pig voice, because that'll just be
it'll be like only an ant could hear that.
Yeah.
It'll be so quick. Or an ant
want to
man.
try the mystery object? Listeners have to guess what it is, and then if they guess right, we send it to them.
So far they've just been piling up.
Yeah.
I don't think we even know what the earlier ones are anymore.
How many clues are you allowed to give about it?
Well, you just can't say what it is, I guess.
So can I say what it's where you use it?
Yeah. I mean, there aren't strict. Yeah.
In the garden.
Okay. Yeah. That's the first rule.
I think someone will get it now.
Yeah.
No. It also, yeah. All right, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to jump into my segment here in that little lull. I'm going to talk about ancestors, because I learned some interesting things about ancestors in the last week or two since our last podcast. So it kind of turns out that we are really closely related to each other. I don't know if you knew that, Reuben, but you're my cousin.
Okay.
That's why when we have sex, it's a little bit gross.
Yeah.
So people have heard about like mitochondrial Eve, because they're sort of, people worked out, if you go for your mother and your mother's mother and your mother's mother all the way back, at what point do you get a mother of everybody? Yeah. And that's about 200,000 years, which is kind of what you expect. It's a really long time. But that's actually super specific, because it's mother's, right? So that's like this lady, 200,000 years in the past, had a daughter, who had a daughter, who had a daughter, who's your mum.
What?
That's what mitochondrial Eve means. There's a few more daughters in the middle there.
What do you mean? Wait. Okay, wait. Do people know what... Can we explain what mitochondria is first?
Yeah. I'm saying it wrong, but you can explain it. You sound like you know more than me.
Well, so
I'm saying it. You're saying it right.
Because isn't... So the reason they use mitochondrial... So basically, Isn't it like easier to do genetic tracking through the mitochondria, which is an organelle in the cell, because it's different to like all the... No, actually, I don't know enough about it.
Just to confirm, the Eve part is because like we've got biblical Eve, and this is mitochondrial Eve.
Yes.
Right.
It's the female line ancestor of all humans. So
Right,
your mother's
and then-
mother's mother.
And they're tracing it through. They're tracing that through mitochondrial DNA.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know much about tracing it. I was looking at the mathematical models, not the biological ones.
Oh, what?
There's also a patrilineal one, where you can find Y chromosomal Adam, who's the
Right.
father's father.
That's cool.
And so he lived at about the same
So he's like
time,
he's like
200,000 years
the
ago.
father of Homo sapiens.
No. He's just the most recent male
Who's
who had a
what?
male son, who had a male son, who had you,
What?
all the way
I don't
down.
understand.
32 times,
Yeah.
approximately. Wait, 32? I
Male
feel
son,
like
man,
32 seems to be around about the number of generations. Like, it seems like a little number until you kind of like calculate generationally. If you go back 32 times, 7 billion people on Earth, you know.
Well, this one's more than 32 because it's 200,000 years ago. But we'll get to the 32 one soon, because this is just male or female lines all the way up. But we don't actually go just with male or female lines all the way up. You can go
Right.
a male, female, and then you get a much more recent ancestor of everybody. So if you count like
Okay.
any ancestor of everybody, that's like your mother, and then your grandfather on your mother's side, and so on all the way back.
And then your great grandmother.
It turns out if you kind of model that and you kind of estimate how likely people are to breed with people who are nearby to them in the world, and you just kind of do a mathematical model rather than a genetic one, and you make a guess as to when in the past the most recent common ancestor of everyone is,
Yeah.
it's about 300 BC. It's really, really recent.
What?
Yeah, it's only about 2,500 years ago.
Is it a common ancestor of? But okay.
So this comes from, I'll give you the thing so you guys can look it up after. This comes from research done by Joseph T. Chang, Douglas Vrody, and Steve Olson, who calculated 300 BC as the most recent common ancestor of all humans, counting anything. But the 32 number comes into play here because that's about 32 generations or a little bit more. But we actually don't have that much DNA, and if you only get half of it each time you have a kid, or each generation, so it's 50. This person, male or female, had a kid, so they only had half of his genes or her genes, and then they had a kid, so that's only 25% of his genes or her genes. If you do that for however many 32 generations, it's down to either 1 or 0 base pairs of genes in you, so you're practically not related to him at all, even though he's a direct ancestor.
Wow.
Yeah. So I felt that was kind of interesting. And then you go back a little bit further and you get all people that live then are either your ancestor or they have no ancestors. So if you go back a few more thousand years from that, everyone who was alive on Earth either had kids that turned into you or didn't have kids. Or their kids didn't have kids or something. But all the lines died out or became your parents. Which is just really weird to think about. So the number for that, when all people alive are directly related to you, is about 5,000 to 15,000 years ago, roughly. We don't really know.
Shit.
But really recent. Yeah, which is crazy. If you think about that, it's like, oh man, all our ancestors, we're all descendant from pharaohs in Egypt. We're all descendant from, Incan kings in South America. It's really crazy. And you're like, but they didn't travel that far. Well, they don't have to travel that far because they only need
Because
to...
the lines just meet up when someone travels.
Well, so even one person doesn't have to travel very far at all. If you're, say, on the southern tip of Africa, and then you get married to someone who's like 10 kilometers north, and they get married, someone in their tribe gets married 10 kilometers north, and 10 kilometers north, and so on.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to get to everyone around the world in a connected line like that. So a few generations back, the lines are going to meet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I thought that was interesting, and if you guys want to read more, I'm probably not the person to ask about it. But you can Google for most recent common ancestor, all those names of those researchers that I said.
It's pretty scucks.
Yeah, pretty cool. That's my bit for today.
Okay. Hi everybody. This is Reuben's History Hour. like Reuben's history quarter of an hour. Like what happens every time, I kind of think I've got a handle on the knowledge, and then like 30 seconds out from presenting it, I realise that I don't. So, like, look, I watched 2 videos today that were a brief history of like the colonial part of Hawaii's history, and I just thought, yeah, I got that in the bag. But I don't think I do. So, anyway, maybe we should probably just make it more of a discussion then, you know, like an open conversation about the history of Hawaii. It's pretty interesting. If I just read this bit from Wikipedia, it'll definitely start me off. So we're just doing the colonial history of Hawaii because, like, that was what the videos were on.
Going back a little bit further, Hawaiian, Maori, Madagascari, and Samoan people all share a common ancestor.
Really?
Ooh.
And then skip
That's
forward.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all very much of the same peoples, but then develop different because of the isolation.
Yeah.
Develop different takes on traditional
Stuff.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Cool.
Hawaiians landed on Hawaii in 700 AD.
700
The
AD.
first,
So this is
the
good.
first
There's
people,
3 people.
700 AD.
Yeah.
That's really recent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did they land from? How did they sail in?
There's one migration from Tahiti, and there's another migration.
Actually, no, you go. Yeah.
I thought it was that there was one. There's 2 landings, and one is from Tahiti, and one is from another. Not Easter Island. It's another island that the Simpson. I don't really know. Anyway, them's the 2 that landed. Apparently, according to one of these videos.
It must have taken them a lot of tries because it's a tiny little island in the middle of an ocean.
Yeah,
You're like
well,
sailing out into the middle of nowhere, and you're like, oh man, I hope Hawaii is here.
well, yeah. Like it's funny. Like there's been this whole thing about how to. What am I trying to say? They've been trying to work out how to represent the history of the Pacific Islands that doesn't seem like islanders are just kind of like going, hey, I get in a boat and I just go float around until there's another island, because that's not really how it was, but it's kind of half how it was, like, because you are taking a risk, but also they knew pretty well where they were. I guess that's the same as like any explorer, like you know what you're doing, but you just like, yeah, also kind of like
Well, also, a huge thing that played a part in like where everyone ended up living was the currents as well, which is why the Melanesian and the Polynesian people never landed on Australia.
yeah.
It's because the currents just swept people right past them. That's how they ended up in Madagascar.
That's
and,
so
and
weird.
Just didn't know that Australia was there at all. You
Yeah.
know, it's pretty lethal waters, and probably most islands that got like populated, there was like currents that led you there. Like yeah,
That's
a little bit
such
of
a trek all the way to Madagascar as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then James Cook arrived
Yep.
in, I think it's 1778. Wikipedia is correct. He set up a trade thing with the Hawaiians, and then he was doing some more exploring, and then came into port like one day to like fix his ship, and everyone told him not to go into. It might have been in Pearl Harbor that he was coming into. Like I don't remember. He landed somewhere in Hawaii, and the Hawaiians weren't that happy with him for some reason, and everyone was like, "You probably shouldn't like stop and get your boat fixed here, and like you probably shouldn't go ashore." And he's like, "It'll be fine. Like the people love me. Like."
I discovered them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and they already kind of knew him, but I think they weren't great fans of him. And then I think it was something like he went on shore, like with a guard of Hawaiians, and the Hawaiian chief like wasn't doing what he said, like wasn't giving him repair parts or something, and so he like tried to like capture the Hawaiian chief, like to hold him for ransom, like, and they just like speared him on the spot.
It wasn't a well thought out plan from him, was it?
No, Mr. Cook. Yeah, so, and that was the end of James Cook. And then, oh my god, and then, okay, so there's this whole thing with the line of Kamehameha, like, chiefs. So, wait, how much did you guys... Okay, so like,
We learned a couple of things, but like it's really spotted information.
Yeah,
like,
same.
It's
We'll,
like,
we'll know a thing or two really specifically, but then
Yeah.
we'll have big swaths of like empty space and
Ooh.
information. Yeah.
Like the tourist brochure kind of things.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like how you
That's
never
right.
learn about between 1914 and 1945 in the German tourist brochures.
oh right.
That's a joke. They actually talk about that a lot.
They do talk about that a lot. It's definitely like one of. Oh yeah, actually, I'm not gonna. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
they had like a lot of statues around Hawaii of like
Yeah.
iconic people,
Yeah.
and like a lot of iconic people were the royal family,
Yeah.
and so like they would have little kind of blurbs about like the history of
Mm.
like the last ruling monarchy, Hawaiian monarchy. And
Yeah.
I think that's where I learned when Hawaiians arrived.
Yeah.
And they like told a little story about, what was her name? Queen.
Lily Oka.
Yeah.
Don't.
Like, I could probably get it. We took some photos of the little blurbs that we found, because they were really interesting, and they were really like,
Lili Uakalani's attempt to rewrite the constitution.
yeah,
That's her.
Yeah.
yeah. So like where we
Lily
stayed
Uakalani.
in Hawaii was like her, like where she lived,
Mm.
and there was like a little park dedicated to her.
Mm.
And she seemed really nice, and it seemed like the colonial people were really awful to her,
Yeah.
and she wrote a song about like how she hopes to get Hawaii back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she died with the firm belief that Hawaii will one day be returned to the Hawaiian people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I also just, I don't know, being over there, also just have that strong hope that would happen too, because it just doesn't, it's not American soil, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it just, it feels like an invasion when you pass an American flag because it's so out of place. You're in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
And then there's like a Safeway and a McDonald's. You're just like, I don't know.
Yeah, nothing about it says American. Like
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
about the landscape or like the statues or the stories or the people says American.
Yeah.
And it just like seems really like wrong.
Yeah.
How did America come to like take control of Hawaii?
Well, so.
I don't really know. They left that part out on the
Yeah.
This is 1914 to 1945
Yeah, like,
bit.
the English, not us.
Yeah, it's this weird, it's this weird thing, right? Where like because the royal family, the whole of Hawaii actually like started pretty like that was actually like a like there's this thing, I don't know. I've just been doing Pacific politics this semester.
Were
and
there
there's-
many countries within Hawaii?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
every island was kind of its own thing. And there's an interesting thing that kind of happened in New Zealand and like Fiji to an extent, like where, you know, because like colonization is happening kind of slowly in these places, or like sometimes it is violent and sometimes it's the thing of like European traders setting up there and like whoever the aristocrats are of like Hawaiian society being like, oh, like wearing like that fur looks nice, like I want a wristwatch, like, or something like that, and being like, and so like there's these like weird hybrid like aristocracies that are like kind of like they're still within like the native rules, but they're actually based on like basically it's a thing of like people high up in Hawaiian or like Tongan society being like we should, or like, you know, someone comes along and is like, who's the king here? And they go like I am the king now. And like they're so, like it happens, I don't know, anyway. Yeah, and so like the line of Kamehamehas, which was like the first like family that ruled like the whole of like all the islands of Hawaii, was like pretty recent. I think like the first king is in like, hold up, where's number one? Number one.
I want to hear the story of them taking power over like that first royal family
Yeah.
taking control of all these islands.
Blah, blah, blah. The
That could be
discovery
like
of the
a
islands.
political sort of, you know, soap opera.
Kingdom of Hawaii. When did the Kingdom of Hawaii start? Of them taking over all the islands.
Yeah, that must be a very interesting story.
I think
So how do you just declare yourself king and just...
Yeah. So the Kingdom of Hawaii was made in 1795 with the unification in quotation marks of the independent islands of Hawaii, Oahu, Maui, Molokai, and Laini under one government. Two major dynastic families, the House of Kamehameha and the House of Kalakaua. Right. So anyway, my point is either Kamehameha 1 or Kamehameha 2 was really into British culture and like literally like told people like we're a British colony, like we're like he wanted to like live in London and stuff, and like Britain would always say like we never actually colonized these people, like we don't claim ownership, but like thanks Hawaii, like that's nice, like that this random ruler likes us so much. And then
Could it be that they're trying to do it for protection or something against the other colonial powers?
Yeah, and I think it's also like literally like this is a really weird thing about colonialism is that like there are literally people like leaders like indigenous leaders who are kind of like like Europe like is the way, like, or like I'm not satisfied with like my life on this island, which I think is like a hard thing to think about because you always think about everyone being loyal to like their thing. But yeah, like I don't know. Reading about this today, they're saying it is weird. Like there's a lot of stuff in Hawaii where like these singular leaders were like, I just love Europe. Like
I can totally imagine the guy sitting on the beach and a big French ship comes up and is like, oh hey, sorry bro, the British came here first. Yeah, you got to leave. We're protected by the British.
Yeah, and like
are we? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it was like, is that Elliot? No, different. 5 grand. But anyway, liked the British, and then there was a thing. Someone set up like sugar plantations, and that was probably from the US. Someone started producing like a lot of sugar, and pineapples came in later. And there was a point where Hawaii was the biggest supplier of sugar to the US, and then the US was trying to annex Hawaii in like 1914 maybe, and then I think it's King Kamehameha IV like set up like this like reciprocity treaty, so like there were like really low like trade tariffs between like America and Hawaii, and that was like a diplomacy thing to try and like keep their like sovereignty. And then the US like needed access to like the naval ports for like as like people were like mounting up for like World War II, and then can't remember if they became a state after or before World War II, but World War II, like once Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, the US took like way more like martial control of Hawaii, and it was like these really strict laws for the duration of World War II, and then it kind of look, I don't know enough about
So that's like 1945 when
that's the
Pearl
end.
Harbor.
Yeah, but they were part of the US before that, weren't they? Where is it? But it got like a lot. Annexation. Here we go. Oh, yeah, look, wow, so way off. A joint resolution. Congressman, new lands to annex Hawaii passed both the House and the Senate. Needed the majority support. The Spanish-American War had broken out, and many leaders wanted control of Pearl Harbor to help the United States become a Pacific power. In 1897, Japan sent warships to Hawaii to oppose annexation. The possibility of invasion and annexation by Japan made the decision even more urgent. McKinley signed the New Lands Resolution annexing Hawaii on July 7, 1898. That's a long time before World War II.
I suppose when you're talking about modern history, 50 years is a long time.
Yeah.
But if you're like talking about,
Geology.
300 BC versus 350 BC, you're like, it's about the same.
So just to make sure I'm following that properly, like in the center of it all, they were basically just terrified of two superpowers, and they just picked the better of two evils as far as they could see.
Yeah, that's like the whole thing of the Pacific is just like, the Pacific's pretty fucked because it's just so many. All that like New World colonization is fucked, but it's like, the Pacific is just all these countries making land grabs because they all want like strategic things, and so they're like really violent about how they're just like, give it to me with my warships, like I need to fire guns off your island, like
Open the country.
Stop
having it be closed.
Give me the sugar. Which is like everywhere, but and then There's more stuff. I don't know. Does anyone have any questions?
Go to Hawaii.
Go to Hawaii.
Well, yeah.
It's not a question, but
Oh,
we're
yeah.
going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Do you know? I mean, I'm not sure if they came up too much in this, but like Melanesian people don't get talked about nearly as much as Polynesian people.
No.
Melanesian people.
That's like Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also, Fiji. The original inhabitants of New Zealand were Melanesian, and then the Maori came along and just completely wiped them out. You know, so Maoris are not the original custodians of New Zealand. They actually only arrived 750 years ago. And then when the British arrived, the Maori held the land so well that we ended up with the Waitangi Treaty, which is why New Zealand celebrates Waitangi Day as one of the earliest treaties between natives and British. Basically, they're just like, game recognized game. You all can hold this land pretty solidly, and you all are big. So, yeah, we don't want to fight anymore. We should definitely just share this. And the Maoris were like, yeah, that sounds pretty tight. We heard what's going on in Samoa. That doesn't sound too good, and our place is much bigger. We want to, so, yeah.
Didn't the British end up going against the treaty anyway?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but that's like part and parcel with Britain signing anything. Brexit is not happening, so, I mean, whatever. But I guess the thing I was going to say was, like, does anyone know why Melanesian people just don't have clout, like, globally? Like, this is not a term that we're even taught in schools, really, Is it because there was never anything on their land that the British wanted enough?
Is there a Western country that invaded the Melanesian one, and is it currently a first world country?
Is New Caledonia part of Melanesia? I can't even remember.
That's a good question. I wouldn't be able to answer that one. And I guess, do we count Indonesia, like, is currently invading New Guinea? I mean,
Yeah.
invading, it depends on who you ask,
Yeah.
Well, they've colonized half of Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just might be out of our sort of Western sphere of
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah. 'cause
If there
I
wasn't a
guess-
European power that took over one of the countries and then had agreements and awareness with native people there, like
Yeah.
you have with Maoris.
Yeah, I think like from what we were doing in these lectures, like at least about the Solomon Islands and about maybe what's Bougainville? Is that part of Papua New Guinea? No, maybe that's part of the Solomon. I don't know.
Bougainville is not a flattering name.
No, it's not, but it is an island.
It's an
Where's
island.
Bougainville?
There was a massive. Hang on. There's a massive.
Whoa, what?
Vivid.
Oh.
Yeah.
Bougainville Island.
The main island of the autonomous region of Bougainville.
There was a big violent thing. There's lots of violence in these areas.
Of course, it's called Bougainville.
Okay, yeah, it is the autonomous region of Papua New Guinea.
Who named it Bougainville?
It's Boug. It's like the flower, like Bougainvillea.
Oh, okay. So I thought some cruel person
Yeah.
was like, well, we're going to call
They're all
this
shit
place.
counts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think a lot of it feels like a lot of the places in Melanesia were like some of the last places on Earth to be colonized, and they were only colonized for like strategic stuff. Like it wasn't really a resource thing. So the countries aren't like. Maybe it's the same reason like you don't hear. I don't fucking know.
Could it possibly be, like, how old's the term Melanesia? Like, is it just a new term?
Hey, that's one. That's one for the old Google machine, I'd say. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
thought.
they might have only coined that in the last couple of decades, potentially. Which means there's no time for it to be written into any syllabus, which is why we haven't heard it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in schools, is what I'm talking about.
Micronesia. Oh yeah, that's Micronesia. Oh yeah, New Caledonia is in Melanesia. Yeah.
So, Micronesia, what's...
Micronesia is further north, and that's like the Cook Islands.
1832, the word came out.
Oh, okay. That's
Here we go.
Still a while.
So,
Wow,
yeah,
nice.
so...
Super blurry. On.
So yeah, I guess that comes back to my question. Is like, why? So if 1832 we coined the term, that means that there's been like contact since then, it's like, why is it that like Polynesian is like a very, and not just Australia too, like that's like a term that folks know, but Melanesia, Micronesia even, like I didn't even know that.
Well,
until
it's probably just because there are massive like white populations in New Zealand and Hawaii,
Hey,
right? Or like just
that's
like
actually
massive
another one,
colonial.
Yeah.
That, like there's like cultural export from those countries in a way that there's not really from Melanesia or Micronesia.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
You know, you can
Oh, that
eat
is what-
like
yes, I-
Polynesian food.
Yeah, no, I was saying you backed me up there.
Oh right, yeah.
Solidly agreeing. You
If
explained
you
that
can
well.
go to a
Yeah.
Polynesian restaurant
Polynesian,
Yeah.
baby.
and like there's not many Melanesian restaurants
No.
or
But-
Micronesian restaurants.
Yeah.
Micronesian restaurant doesn't sound like you're gonna get your money's worth.
No. No, it doesn't.
It's small, small food.
I feel like if it's exported as like a well enjoyed food, then it's more likely to be in people's vocabulary.
Maybe that's just it. Maybe they've got no
Ah.
good stuff.
No,
Maybe,
I don't think it's that. But maybe like
maybe their food sucks.
maybe we eat more Polynesian food because those specific areas have more like white colonies.
But
so
also, like,
Yeah, and more other colonists in general. I think there's a thing about like Polynesian food is really because of like the trade routes and stuff. There's like Japanese, American, and like like that's part of why the food. I don't know,
Yeah, Polynesia covers a way larger area,
yeah.
even if the actual
yeah,
land
but
mass
I
is
can't
about
help
the same
but
size.
keep on thinking it like they're right. You keep bringing it back to like colonization. There's not like Melanesian restaurants because they weren't as heavily like, you know, restaurants equals white people.
yeah,
wanna be
like
fed.
correlation.
Mm.
Yeah,
Sick.
all of the reasons together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I dig.
Should
Oh,
we?
it's lovely.
Yeah. Should we go on to the next topic? Oh, who calling you, Lily?
That's just my housemate. Oh yeah, next topic. Oh, so I didn't really plan a big topic sort of thing for our discussion. I mean, this is basically a big topic, but I was thinking, why don't we talk about the Fermi paradox?
What is that?
Nice.
What is that?
That is, where are the aliens? So we know there's a lot of planets, and there's a lot of space, and there's a lot of time. So, and we know that life is possible, and intelligent life is possible, because we're here. So how come we haven't intercepted any radio signals from other planets? Or haven't found any evidence that we've ever been visited? Or when we look at stars, we never see anything that indicates an industrial society on any of the planets we've looked at.
This isn't.
Why is the universe empty?
Why?
Why does it seem to be empty?
Bread.
And that's
But
called
I
the
think you have
Fermi
some
paradox.
recent information on this topic.
Well,
Might be very
Tell us,
relevant.
Bradley.
I really like the Fermi paradox. I really like to think about the Fermi paradox because it's because you know there's a few different ways of thinking about it. I think the most important thing is to definitely get on the cap of like, you know, we're not special. As special as we can feel. We're mammals with mammal brains, and we constantly put ourselves at the center of everything. So if we take a big step back, life, as far as we know it, should be super common, and like just it should flourish throughout the universe. We are just a part of the universe. And life should be literally just occurring in this Goldilocks zone, as we call it, around the sun, where liquid water can flow.
Yeah.
We so far our understanding of life is that it originates in water, and apart from that, that's about it. Like that's our only sort of criteria for it. So it should be abundant, and we can't see anything which suggests that there is other life. Also tied in with the Fermi paradox is the assumption that life always evolves and progresses in a certain way, and that intelligence is inevitable with life. Which is another thing that I think that I feel like that's a bit of a jump. I feel like sentience is something that we often take for granted with life, but it's just not necessarily that way. But yeah, the Fermi paradox really is just a single question of like why, what's so special about Earth. And there's really there's three things that it could be. It could be that there's something really early on, when the very first single cell organism splits into two. That incident, that could be completely random and have only occurred once here on Earth. Unlikely, but that could be something that is the case. That's a lot rarer than we understand. The second thing is, God, help me out here. Do you know what's the
The multicellular life?
multicellular life? Help me out. Yeah, you go for a while. I've got warmed up.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about
I got a
possible.
little bit.
Yeah, yeah. We're talking about possible great filter candidates in the past. What events
Great
could be
filter.
so rare
Yeah.
that they wouldn't happen anywhere else. So creation of life is one of those. I happen to think that's kind of an unlikely one, because if you measure the time period between the Earth being created, that is when it's like started cooling down around the sun and actually had a crust on it and stopped getting hit by massive asteroids. The time period after that till we can find evidence of life is very short. It's only a few 100 million years. So life started existing very soon after the conditions for life started existing. The second one, which I think is much more likely, or one of the later ones is much more likely, is going to multicellular life, which seems to be a super rare event because we had single-celled life for billions of years, like 4 billion years or something, before we had a multicellular organism. So if it lasted that long after life was already present, it seems to indicate to me that it's a little bit less likely than life being created in the first place. After that, I suppose you could say something about generating intelligence, or like getting to our stage of technological development without blowing ourselves up. Or it could be something in the future where we will blow ourselves up in the near future, and that's why we haven't seen any other civilizations explore the stars. On this, I was learning about the models of the solar system. If you try to model what happens with gravity, if you have planets like our solar system, or let's say you just have a mathematical model of the solar system, you simulate it on a computer, you chuck a couple planets in, chuck a star in, see what happens. It's actually super rare for something that looks like our solar system to exist. In basically all the models, if you have a large gas giant like Jupiter, and Jupiter is super important because it absorbs all the asteroids that come in from further outside the solar system. They're all diverted by Jupiter or hit Jupiter rather than coming in and damaging Earth or the nearer planets. If you have something like Jupiter in a solar system, what usually happens is it kind of slowly moves closer and closer to the center of the solar system and eats up the planets like Earth. And you end up with almost something approaching, well, what looks like a hot Jupiter, which is close to the sun, a very large hot Jupiter and the sun, without rocky planets in the habitable zone for very long.
That's very cool.
So that didn't happen in our solar system, and the reason it didn't happen is because we had Uranus, which is another large gas giant further out than Jupiter. So if you model what happens when you put Uranus there, Jupiter does come in a little bit, and then it slowly goes back out again and goes into a stable orbit further out. So apparently that's like super rare to have two nearby gas giants that stop each other from going into the middle of the solar system and eating up the rocky planets. But if you don't have a gas giant at all, then your risk from meteors is quite high. So you might not last the billions of years you need without the planet being destroyed. So that could be it.
Cool.
I have two things,
Cool.
and they're both videos that you've showed me. First one was, have you seen any Kurzgesagt videos?
Yeah.
And they talked about like possible examples of life on other planets, and the only one that I remember which like really fascinated me was the example of a planet with an ice layer around the outside and water on the inside that was heated by a warm core.
Wow.
And that like organisms can exist in the water underneath the layer of ice, but because they're underneath that layer, they're not like looking out at the stars or aware that there's like another universe outside of their own like interior universe.
Yeah. So they could be developing down there. They could have civilizations and things.
Yeah.
And they're
Wait,
just like,
sorry.
this is the universe.
And they would think, there's nothing else. Like,
Wait.
why would you?
So why can't they see the universe?
Because they're covered by a layer of ice.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like if you look up and you just see that cloud, and that's the whole sky forever, you
And
never
there's
would
no way of
evolve to
getting
look
out.
up.
And you're like
So-
submerged in water.
Because like we always think about planets in the Goldilocks zone because like we think Earth, it's always got to be like ocean water, but they could be far enough away from their sun so that they've got a frozen cap. But the center of the Earth is hot enough so there is liquid water at the center, and there could be like super intelligent crustacean life or like something that resembles an octopus.
Yeah.
The thing I'm really interested in as well is that like, you know, we often like think that alien life would just completely not resemble life on Earth at all. But recently, a bird that was extinct 176,000 years ago is back. It's back from extinction, and which kind of brings up the idea that like
there are good ways to.
yeah, the way that we evolve is completely dependent on environment and stuff like that, and like it's not random at all. In fact, it's like there are very specific, you know, like it will be, the mimicry will occur across the universe as long as like the needs were still the same for life, sort of thing. Like we might find beaks and tentacles on other planets as well, because like it's just necessary for gathering energy.
Is that with the bird thing? Is that just a bird that is very similar to the bird that used to exist?
No, like
because if it's the same bird, it probably would have just been like not found for a very long time. But if it's very similar, like it ended up with what's that called? Convergent evolution. If it ended up looking very similar because it's in the same environment. Is that what you're talking about?
That's very interesting. I didn't actually hear that side of it, and I also know that we live in a very sensational era for information like this. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to double check that sort of thing.
Evolution is a little bit of random.
Oh yeah, God, I'm not trying to say that evolution's not random at all.
Yeah.
My understanding of it was that a bird had returned.
Yeah.
That like the way like the article was presented was that like the exact qualities, like the exact DNA of this thing that we only had fossils for had come back through, and like in the same way that we can map where human evolution came from, they kind of suggested like if we were all to go potentially through the same avenues that we got here in the first place, we could just come back, sort of thing. I think that's
But
what they were hinting at.
then it's just the same bird. It was just like we didn't see it for a long time. Do you know what I mean?
I also have the other video you showed me. Sorry, do you mind if I segue to the other thing? Or should we ponder this for a while? We should definitely look it up because now I'm interested.
Yeah.
The other video you showed me today, like about the space junk that floated past. Sorry, probably didn't float. Like catapulted past Earth. That was not made by us.
Oh yeah.
Like we watched that.
Wait,
the
what?
video we watched
Have you
today.
seen this thing on like the cylindrical the cigar?
Oh yeah. It was just an asteroid, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
I think like the conversation around it is heating up a little bit at the moment, mainly around its once it had circled around the sun, it accelerated, where it should have we should have seen potentially the opposite, or we should have seen some sort of God, what's it called? Like it should have had a
Tail?
like a tail. Yeah,
Right.
where the trajectory should have changed, but instead it came to it kept a perfectly still trajectory and sped up, which
Right.
brings up questions like potentially the reason that we identified it as this oblong shape. You know, the way that the light played on it, it could have been a what's it called?
Solar
One of those
sail.
Solar
shape
sail.
things.
You know, yeah, or it could have actually been something else. Like, you know, we're looking at different ways to explain the phenomenon which made us believe that it was a, you know, 10 meters by 100 meters long log floating through space in a certain way. I like to believe that it was space junk. I like to believe that we're not the only creatures littering the universe, and that someone got clumsy potentially a long time ago, and this is a result of something that they kind of just like let get away from them. Yeah, but it's nice to think too, like we discovered it by accident. We're going to be putting up another similar observatory soon, and like potentially we could be seeing a lot more of these things and like learning a bit more. We know so little. I like the fact that every now and then when we think it's aliens, 10 years later some science has caught up and we can see how primitive we were to believe that, you know. So exciting, yeah. Nonetheless.
Do you know the argument Russell's teapot? It's an argument against the existence of God, where it's talking about, hey, you know, I can't prove that God doesn't exist. You can't prove that there isn't a China teapot floating out between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. It's like trying to say, that's something absolutely ridiculous. It's not there. It's never. That's why you can't. But you can't disprove it. Therefore, my claim is valid. You know? It's having a go at religion. But now there is one. There is a teapot floating out between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. When I'm not certain. When Musk launched his car to the orbit of Mars and Jupiter, and they just put little bits and pieces inside it, I'm pretty sure someone would have put a teapot inside it for the lulz.
Yeah.
That's a relevant thing for the space junk.
Absolutely.
Some guy shot his car up, and now it's floating between Mars and Jupiter.
Some guy. This guy's gonna like rule all of us one day. I've got that weird feeling. Well, Melissa's gonna rule Mars.
Yeah.
How's that going? Is
the Mars thing? It's going great. Yeah.
They've got the architecture.
Oh my god! Someone kind of tied all of his businesses together for me, and it's just like this whole time it's always been about Mars. It's like he's got like the electric car company, of course, who's going to power it all with solar. He's got the boring company, so that's how he's going to like build underground tunnels, because to be on Mars is actually really bad for human life. Like, just like the radiation out there would be terrible. So it's got connections between everything will be underground. It's this boring company. What else has he got? SpaceX. Obviously, that's how you get there. He's got
Solar City.
Oh my god, it's just so scary, man. It's like, of course, the whole time he's just had his eye on Mars. It's going to be Planet Elon.
I love the tie-ins between his companies.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Do you think America's going to try and claim Mars, as its territory?
Well, America and China are going to go for the moon. Now, that's going to be the thing.
Base.
It's going to be a race for the moon base. That'll be the thing,
Do any other countries have any plans for Mars, or is it just
America?
America?
I'm sure everyone's got plans for Mars, but I don't know.
I mean, the entities that are after Mars is NASA, India, China, ESA, and SpaceX, Elon Musk, separately.
So within our life, we'll see like a Mars race?
Well, I mean, Elon Musk's plan is to get there within 5 years.
Right.
5 years of now?
Yeah, 2024.
He's a bloody fool.
He was aiming for 2022, but he had to delay it a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, I believe that there'll definitely be a moon base by 2024, and with a moon base, it will be a lot more cost efficient to be able to send things to Mars. So I think after 2024, we can reopen the discussion of how soon Mars will be. But I think it's all wishful thinking and trying to gain capital and get investors at this stage by talking a big game. And of course we want to believe that, but
I don't know if he needs that much more capital than he's sort of got.
Do you reckon he'll get there by 2024?
Well, if we work out the cost of SLS, which is the NASA rocket that's meant to go places, it can carry 4 people or something, and it can't get them all the way to Mars. It can get them to the moon. 4 people, and so far it's cost about $20 billion. So if you want that kind of money, that's really expensive. But the money that Musk is spending on his rocket, which will carry, I think, 60 people at a time all the way to Mars and land them and then bring them back as one go, it'll only cost $10 billion to develop and $10 million to fly, which is way less.
Yeah.
And is paying for that with internet. They just launched the first 60 satellites to provide internet to the entire world, which only takes another 60 launches, which is about 2 or 3 years worth of launches, and then it's got internet provided to everyone in the world faster than optic fiber. And you can sell that to people.
I love it.
And make $10 billion every year.
Wow.
Which is insane. But yeah.
Well, good for him, Got a hustler's mindset. I like that old Mr. Musk.
He's going to Mars.
He's going to Mars.
Yeah.
Hey, what do I know? Seriously. Good on
Sorry,
you,
sorry. Oh, Muskie.
Musketeer.
New ruler of Mars.
Him and Grimes.
Yeah.
That's
they
not
still
happening.
together?
That's not happening anymore.
Oh, they're
Oh,
not
what?
Yeah.
Oh. I like
Damn, it
Grimes.
must have been that.
The
Wait,
weed
what was that
thing?
new? What, the weed thing? Oh, the acid thing?
Oh.
No,
Smoke.
she got him to like change his like stock number to 420 or something. Wasn't
Oh.
that what it was?
Oh my god, Grimes.
What was that?
He was tweeting about he hated people short selling Tesla.
Yeah.
So short selling is when you sort of borrow stock and then sell it, betting that it's going to go down. So all these people had billions of dollars betting against him. So they were like really trying to destroy Tesla to get their money back. And he's like, "Fuck this! I'm gonna take my company private. I'm just gonna buy the whole thing by selling it, half of it to Saudi Arabia, and we're gonna take it private at a stock price of 420."
Right.
And then he got sued for that and lost. So
Wow.
yeah, because he shouldn't have said that he was gonna sell it without actually being able to sell it.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow, that's such a silly thing to get in trouble for. Like, oh my gosh, such an official like dude who's trying to be king of Mars, and like he's like in court for changing the price to 420. It's just like, oh my god, that's so hectic.
Name one genius that ain't crazy.
Yeah.
Oh god. I love the stories about him, like the tunnel thing. Like his tweet one month, he just said, "I'm so fucking sick of traffic. I'm gonna buy a tunnel machine and start digging." And 2 months later, preparations for the tunnel have almost finished. We start digging next week.
Wait, did he do it?
2 months after that, first tunnel goes from my office to the freeway. It's complete.
What? It happened?
Yeah, he's got a whole company that digs tunnels now.
Boring
that's the
company.
boring
Yeah,
Yeah.
Are they called the boring?
yeah, because like the boring company.
Oh my god, this guy.
Actually just do.
Like he's like somewhere in between supervillain and like stand-up comic. Like I just don't.
It's so super villain-esque. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna call my tunnel company the boring company.
It's like, oh, because you don't want to know about that. Don't
No,
pay any
no.
attention to what I'm
You
up to
don't
over there.
And the thing with the flamethrowers.
What was the flamethrowers?
Oh my god, I forgot about the flamethrowers.
The official Boring Company merchandise, they only ever sell one thing at a time. And they've
Right.
only ever sold two things. First was hats. And they sold all the hats. So I was like, oh, let's sell flamethrowers.
They sold flamethrowers.
Boring Company flamethrowers.
Really?
And they sold 20,000 at $500 each. And he made $1 million.
Wow.
He sold them so quickly. I remember when he was interviewed about it too. He was like, "Oh, I recommend you don't buy them." It was just like, right, so they're selling quite quickly, and I recommend against it. It's like,
So yeah, it's a stupid thing to buy.
oh my god.
Did he end up solving the South Australian thing? Did he actually end up doing stuff for that?
The
power thing? He said like...
Oh yeah, he
if-
built that.
Right.
Yeah, that's done.
That was weird.
He did that really quickly.
Were you guys here when that happened? Or was that...
We were in Melbourne. I remember following that because like it was foolproof by the end though. Because Elon's like, if I don't do it within 100 days, I'll foot the bill. And some other billionaire was like, hey, listen, if he does do it, I'll foot the bill, or something like that. Like basically, like
They kind
Australia
of
was
free
never going to
energy
pay
back.
for it. We were all just kind of like, oh, we're getting courted by two very rich people.
Did you hear about this?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Not extensively.
Well, because it was like South Australia's power grid was heap shit, and then Elon Musk said he'd power them with wind in 100 days, right? Was that?
Yeah, solar.
Oh,
He
solar.
just tweeted at them. He was like, hey, I could fix this for you.
Yeah.
100 days from contract signing or it's free.
He's a super villain.
And the Premier was like, all right, I'll chat with you.
Yeah.
So good. Such a baller move.
And
to
then
have
there
it
was
done.
there was that weird. Remember that weird press interview? I think they'd like just signed the agreement, and it was the South Australian Premier and the National Minister for Energy, who's like a bit of a cunt, and like literally, he said it's like the South Australian Premier said something so snarky. He was like, because the Minister for Energy was like, oh yeah, like this is great, this is all going ahead, and then like the South Australian guy was like, like. Yeah, it is good that like someone cares about us, because like the Australian government clearly doesn't, like this guy doesn't, like
Oh, shit.
like just like called him
Jeez.
a cunt like to his face. Like, like, whoa, and like yeah, everyone in the press conference went silent. It's pretty funny. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Love it.
Love it.
Damn.
What was
Yeah,
the
cool
original
guy.
topic?
Oh, aliens. We're talking about aliens.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. This always happens at the end. I like the aliens though.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we haven't been killed is good evidence that aliens don't exist.
You reckon?
Yeah. Because you'd think they would have invented an AI and at least one of them would have gone wrong and spread out in all directions, just turning everything into paperclips. But it didn't.
That's true.
How much do you think we've killed inadvertently?
In space or outside? Or inside?
On the planet.
Like outside of our planet.
Oh.
Well then, but you've got to like start bringing up like how much is alive outside of our planet. Even that we're not even sure about. So
Yeah. It's
Probably
just like,
not
it's
much.
a possibility.
Is there bacteria on Mars?
We don't know yet. They're
Yeah.
very careful when they send things to Mars. Like they sterilize the shit out of it, so that when you land on Mars, it doesn't. And then they deliberately go to areas where they don't think there's going to be bacteria.
Yeah, you wouldn't want any
Yeah.
poo on the ship.
Yeah,
Like,
Well, because we found
that's happened. And the moon mission, you can read the transcripts from it. There's a bit where it's like, suddenly someone says, "Who done it?" So what? Who did it? Whose is it? It's not one of mine. Mine was a little more sticky than that. Houston, there's a turd floating in the capsule. sorry, go on.
I was gonna say we found liquid water on Mars, and we haven't been able to get up close to that yet. But the likelihood, if there is life on Mars, it's going to be in that water for sure. Just like something microscopic, but there nonetheless, you know. So that'll be interesting to know if there is anything there.
Imagine if it's just a colony of platypus were living in there.
Yeah. Like what?
But just,
How did this happen?
Like,
But
that's
just
how that
platypus.
happened. Yeah, only
Yeah.
platypus, and like, oh shit.
What do we eat? Each other.
yeah.
It's the perfect system.
What are they?
Powered by the sun. We're all powered by the sun. There's some little bacteria that are powered by the Earth.
All right.
All right. Your ice planet does exist, by the way.
Oh really?
Yeah, Europa is like that. It's
That's
it's a
hectic.
moon of Jupiter, I think. And it's got an ice shell, and the middle is liquid water, which stays liquid because it's like the middle isn't hot like Earth is, but because of tidal effects from being really close to Jupiter.
Yeah.
So the water rushes through and then rushes back, and then that heats it up by friction.
That's so cool.
So it's only on the surface that there's ice.
That's what I'm really hoping.
Yeah,
Tying it all back in, Hawaiian people have believed that the octopus came from a different planet. They believe that all creatures originated here on Earth except for the octopus.
Wasn't there like a thing where there's some part of its DNA that doesn't match anything else?
There's very likely chance
Sounds
of
like
that.
Nick.
It's extremely
Nick
strong.
Charik.
Like it's very strong without having any muscles.
Yeah.
It's extremely intelligent without a brain. And also there was another thing that was just like, what? Huh?
I mean, just look at it.
What? Like yeah. Just I think that part of the belief is that the Hawaiians believe that the universe expands and eventually gets to a certain size and then retracts right down to a single point and bounces back out again.
Yeah.
And they're like, the octopus survived the last time it did that. And I thought that was just cool. I just thought it was
really
a cool thing to
cool.
believe.
I mean, it's possible the universe does that.
Yeah, I think
The-
that's actually very
the
cool that
octopus wouldn't
Hawaiians
survive.
hypothesize something that is quite plausible like that, you know?
There's always
It would kill
plausible shit in
this
there.
kills the octopus, though.
Yeah, you know, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah,
Can octopus, like, if you had like a crack in a door,
Yeah.
could they slide underneath it?
they can do
Depends
all
how
sorts of wicked, weird shit like
Thin it
that.
is. But yeah, they can go pretty thin.
Yeah, they can do weird stuff, my friends. You should definitely
Not bad.
Google what octopus get up to when we put them to the test.
When we're not watching.
They can go in bottles and stuff, right?
Yeah,
Whoa.
Can you sing a song? Can you sing a song about the octopus?
It's too long. But,
Just sing a bit of it. Sing the
um,
chorus.
She's got legs in all the right places. Well, it's really Elliot's. Oh, the 3 heartbeat just for me. Da-da-da-da-da. Dolphins and eels don't have half of the feels that I know she's got for me. She can squeeze into all kinds of spaces. Pick locks and recognize faces. Ambrosia and pearls don't mean nothing to me. 'Cause I've got a girl who's a jewel of the sea. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Wow.
I feel like
I
he
think
sang
that's
it better on the album.
Yeah. That's mostly Elliot.
Do you mention the octopus that guesses the World Cup?
No, we should though.
Ah.
Is that one's name is Paul or something?
I don't know.
I've got a theory about this. I reckon they started with 500 octopuses, and then they sort of filmed each of them guessing each team all
yeah,
the way.
it's very likely.
Then you have 250 that were right, and then 125, and then 62, all the way down, and then you got one that got it right every time. And then you say, hey, look, this octopus got the last 25 right. We want to bet some money on it getting the next one right?
Are you sure it can't just tell the future of soccer?
I don't know, it's possible.
Because it can fit in a bottle.
Yeah. The argument is very compelling.
I mean, psychic powers and contortion.
Kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah,
If we've learned anything from Indian gurus,
that's right.
Oh,
yeah, it's that. Yeah.
sounds like my mother.
A lot of similarities between the Maharishi and octopi. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.